Okay, so let me introduce myself first. I am Margaret Krantz in the Levitt Career Center, and I'm going to be talking to you today about getting started with LinkedIn. And that is going to begin by talking about how to build your profile. And then in the last sections of this, I will be talking to you about ways that you can actually use LinkedIn to help you. So one of the things to know is that LinkedIn is not a typical social networking tool like Facebook or Twitter, where you get to sort of say whatever is on your mind and the whole world can know about it. Instead, it's a professional networking site, and you need to think about it as sort of something that is meant to be more formal. This may be the difference between casual clothing and business casual or professional clothing. Just keep the attitude that you need to put your best foot forward. You need to make sure that you speak in complete sentences and punctuate them well when you're working through LinkedIn, and have sort of the mindset of an organization where people are assessing your professional skills as you're interacting with them. And because LinkedIn wants to maintain that kind of professional image and high quality, they help people when they are preparing their profiles. So for example, as you're creating your own profile, they'll suggest ways that you can improve it and sections that you can have. And there's some flexibility in what you include in your profile, some minor flexibility in how it's organized. But they will walk you through different sections that are optional things for you to include. For example, I've blown up this drop-down menu to show you a little bit about what's in the background section. You'll be able to put information about your work experience, your education, volunteer experience. Those always appear in that same order, but they're located underneath the background tab. I've also got more information about what's under accomplishments, because that's a place where you can actually put your examples of your work, courses that you've taken, and more detail than is necessarily possible in other places on your profile. Okay, so there are a lot of different aspects about building a profile, but I thought I would start off by having you guys look at these photographs that are possible examples of people's photographs that I have found on LinkedIn. And what I'd like you to do is I'm going to give you a poll and have you guys vote on what you think is, pick the top 3 that you think are most perfect for LinkedIn. Just take a quick moment and vote for me. Okay, if anybody else needs more time, unmute yourself and say so. Otherwise, I'm going to share your results. Okay, here we go. All right, so can you guys see the results here? Okay, so you can see that everybody really liked image number 1, and a fair number of people liked 6 and 7, but there was also, was that a vote for number 3 here as well? Okay, so I would like somebody to unmute and say what it is that you think was so likable about number 1. Anybody willing to jump in?
I can do that.
Okay.
Well, you look at it, it's kind of like a nice little like profile picture. It's cut. It looks like she's kind of in like kind of a business kind of attire, and look at the smile.
Oh, okay. So she looks friendly and she looks professional at the same time.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anybody want to say anything about 6 and 7? How about you, Jace? You willing to jump in there?
Sure. They both look very professional. They have a smile on their face. They're wearing professional clothing, and they seem to have like with 6. The background is it's blurred out, even though it's not a solid color, so it's not as distracting.
Yes, I agree with you. I think that what you have in the background can make a difference to how much people focus on your face versus being sort of overwhelmed by all the detail around you. It looks to me like 1 and 7 were actual professional photographs that were intended to be portraits, and 6 was probably more a casual image that she may have been at a conference, for example. Somebody said, "Hey," and she turned and they got a picture of her right there on the spot. So it wasn't necessarily something that she planned ahead of time. There were a couple of votes for number 3. I need somebody to weigh in and tell me what they liked about that. It's a pretty small image, so it's kind of hard to see, but that is potentially a little bit more problematic because it looks a little bit more like a school picture rather than a professional image. Her hair looks a little bit like she hadn't really taken time to sit professionally. So, yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do is stop sharing those results. I'm going to have you guys vote again, but in this case, I'm going to have you vote on the worst 3. So, so go ahead and do that as quickly as you can. Okay, and here we have 100% of the votes that went toward number 5, which is, okay, so could somebody weigh on what they don't like about number 5? How about you, Alan, would you say?
Yeah, I didn't like how it's not really a picture directly of his face and he's doing something different and it's not very business-like or professional.
Yeah, good answer. It didn't look like it was really meant for this kind of a situation at all. How would it have been, Alan, if he had posted that as his Facebook picture? What would you think?
That'd probably be more appropriate because it's less like a formal trying to build relationships kind of site. It's more casual and yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then that's why I put this photo in here so that you can sort of start to tune your eye to see what, you know, you're sort of learning how to swim in a different temperature of water. And this helps you to get a little bit of a view of how an employer might look at a portrait. What about number 4? There were 4 out of 5 people who said, nah, not really number 4. Somebody, Meredith, would you be willing to talk about what might be a problem with number 4?
It looks like a selfie. So
Looks
it's not
like,
like
hold on,
that
you
was
break.
me.
I keep talking on top of you. Say it again.
It looks like a selfie, just something she took real quick.
Yes. Yeah, I actually chose that specifically because it looked like a selfie to me. You can maybe not see her shoulder the way sometimes you do, but yeah, it looks very impromptu. She's got the sun behind her, so the lighting isn't really great for her. And also she's wearing very casual clothing here. So I think that would make a really nice portrait for Facebook again, but not for LinkedIn. So do know that the kind of attire that or clothing that you're wearing in your portrait needs to be better for the industry you're trying to break into and not sort of what you might wear to a party, a dance on Friday night, if we ever get to do that again. So bear in mind the kind of attitude that you need to have for this. Okay. All right, so does anybody have any questions about photos? Okay, so what I want to do is give you an overview of what the main components are in a profile. And I'm going to start with the headlines. We've already talked about photos and the about summaries. So I'm going to walk you through a few examples and tell you features that I think are helpful for these. So in this case, Alex is, you can see that he is a sales representative with Combined Insurance, and that is called his headline. It's a description of a little bit about him that he wants the world of LinkedIn to know. In his case, he has chosen to give his job title and his employer. So that summarizes him pretty well. In my case, I am Margaret Krantz, the Senior Director of Career and Professional Development at Hanover College. And so that is my headline. Alex has chosen an image that I think works really well for the insurance industry. And his about section gives some keywords that are specific to that industry that make sense for the kinds of information that somebody who's looking for an insurance sales agent would need to know. He also has another interesting thing about his profile, which is that he already has 380 connections on LinkedIn, which shows that he's an active user of it. So that could be interesting to a potential client or employer as well. Next is a profile for Daniel Johnson. All of these are alumni, by the way. And Daniel, again, has a professional photograph, a clear headline, and a clear about section. And he also has the advantage of having used an actual banner that is an image or logo of his employer. And so that's the thing that's behind his head. And you can see that makes a difference in if you compare these two, the fact that Daniel has put that extra effort in conveys helpful information about him. He's gone the extra mile, and that actually is visually interesting. And then in this case, JC is, I chose her example because she is currently working as a residence director at a university, and she calls herself the residence director by day, Master of Science in Leadership and Change student by night. And so she is working in higher education. I think her having a more casual shirt that she's wearing here with the logo of her university is something that sort of conveys approachability and is appropriate for the audience that she's trying to reach out to. She says in her about section that she's here for coffee and conversations that matter. And so that is inviting. And her photograph is also inviting. It makes her look approachable to graduate students. So that's why I chose her. It's not necessarily true that you need to look like you're ready for corporate America or ready to work for a bank. Sometimes a slightly different image is effective for the audience you're trying to reach. So moving on to the headlines section, I gave you examples of 3 alumni who had headlines that were perfect for them. But in your case, if you don't have a job or an employer, then it's okay for your headlines to be aspirational, describing what it is that you're looking for rather than what it is that you've already found. So in these are actual examples of Hanover students' headlines. And so student at Hanover seeking job, Hanover College seeking job in finance, senior at Hanover College seeking full-time job in the sports marketing field, and so on. That gives you an idea if you were an employer or a person in LinkedIn and you were encountering this person, you'd have a quick sense of whether that was a position that you might be searching for or somebody who you'd like to be able to give a leg up to because you're a Hanover alum. So it can be very beneficial to to you at this stage of your career to describe what it is that you're looking for. Once you have chosen your photograph, you've decided to put a banner in that seems appropriate either to your setting, like a picture of Hanover College or a picture of a place where you've interned, something that makes sense, not you at the racetrack. Then you can start building out the additional parts of your background or experience. And the first thing that they're going to ask you to do is to put in your work experience. And that is a pretty flexible thing. It doesn't have to be paid work experience. And the reason I chose this example is that you can see there's a career peer mentor. That's a position that I actually hire for and supervise myself. So I know it's a campus activity. And yet this person has put it under work experience because it gave him skills that he thought employers might want to know about him. So you can put paid, he is paid, but he's doing it on campus. You could put paid experience there, and you can also put unpaid if you want. If you have a lot of volunteer experience, that can be its own section, or it can be incorporated into this section. And there are other places where you can put it. So you need to make some decisions about what the best strategy is to compile your experience. Here's another example of someone who has a work experience section. Both of them have put bullets under their experience to make it easier to read. And in this case, this is a Hanover alum who's a graphic designer, and he has included images of his actual graphic designs so that employers can see that he's done something and then see what it actually looks like that he did. And I think that's a really good idea for some people who have examples of work that they want to make available to possible employers. Okay, once you've got your work experience laid out, then what you need to do is include your education. It falls after work experience in LinkedIn. And this includes could include highlights from your extracurricular activities, or you could put those under work experience if you want. You can name different clubs and organizations that you've been in here, or in some cases you could put those in a later section called accomplishments. So I just wanted to show you that this is another place where you can fold experience in. After you've filled out your experience section, you have some other options of things that you can include in your profile if you would like. One of those is skills. And this can be a potentially helpful thing for you if you have a particular field that you're trying to break into and you want to prove to employers that you have skills that are relevant to that. Employers sometimes actually headhunt through LinkedIn, where they figure out specific skills that they are searching for, and then they'll find profiles of people. You know, they might, if I were headhunting, I might do a search where I was looking for class of 2021 with public speaking and Excel skills, for example. And then that would, I would be able to find people who matched those. So I recommend that, that you do have a skills section and that you choose those skills carefully. Never put something on that you aren't actually skilled in, but figure out skills that would be valuable in the field you're trying to go into. And one place that you can do that is to go to ONET. It's ONET, O-N-E-T, online.org. And ONET will actually give you specific skills that might be helpful. So that's a really good starting place. Figure out the skills that are required in the field you're trying to go into, and then identify the ones that you think you could prove, and then go to LinkedIn and have them suggest take a skills quiz that will prompt you to come up with skills. And you can also hover over this pencil icon when you're developing your profile, and it will allow you to populate your skills. And it will then take your skills, and when you're networking with people, when you're adding them as connections, it will ask them, does this person have this skill that they've claimed to have? So people can start endorsing you. I have never asked anybody to do that for me, and I've got hundreds of people who have done that just spontaneously. So the same could be true for you. And you can also pin your top 3 so that the ones that you think matter most are always held at the top, as I have done in my profile. Over here on the right, you can see the stacked menu, or sometimes called hamburger menu. And that allows you, anytime you see that, it allows you to move things around within a section. So you can decide what order you want people to see things. They're more likely to notice the first thing in a list than the things afterwards. Certainly the top 3 then out of 25. So this is a way for you to control that a little bit. Okay, so another section that's an optional one, if you would like to include it, is your interests. And you can put anything in there that you want. They have all kinds of different examples. I don't know, thousands of them probably. But I do want you to be aware that employers will look at your LinkedIn profile, and they will read through to see what your interests are. So whatever you include is potentially something that will make an association with them, or that they will draw a conclusion from. If you look at this top example, you can see that this person has wine and spirits on here, a distillery on here. That could be a perfectly neutral thing. And if you were trying to get a job working in a say for Monarch Beverage in distributing beer and wine, then those could actually be to your advantage. But if you're working in a very conservative industry, it could be a red flag. So do sort of tune your ear to the way that an employer will view the things that you include. But there are all kinds of different examples of what you could include, and the range is very broad. The accomplishments section I mentioned a little bit earlier, but it is something that can be built out quite significantly. You could put projects, publications, papers, awards, just a host of different things that you might want to mention, courses that you've been in. And each one of those things is something that can help to sort of start to build more and more evidence that you would be good for the field you're trying to get into. So I think that is a really good way for you to get some extra value out of LinkedIn. And once again, as I said earlier, you can't really move sections around in LinkedIn, but you can reorder certain aspects of it. And so, for example, if you had your work experience in and you had 3 experiences that are through the present, it's possible for you to move them around within that, but you can't move something that's through the present below something that had already happened. The protocol that gets to win all the time is reverse chronological order. It starts with the most recent and works its way back. So within several things that are current, you can move them into any order that works for you. The same is true for recommendations. Another thing that you're able to do is to ask people to write recommendations for you. The most recent of those will always be on top. The most recent accomplishments will be on top. Although in the accomplishments area, what they do is to put it in descending order of how many you have. So in this example, the person has 7 projects that they've done, 3 publications, 1 honor. So 7 will always win. If you wanted your publications to be above your projects, then you would need to have more of them than you have projects. I strongly urge you to proofread your profile as carefully as possible to make sure that it has no typographical errors or missing words, for example. And LinkedIn really wants you to have the best profile possible. And so they will sometimes reach out to you to tell you, hey, here's a way that you could add a little bit more information. This happens to be an example that I received, and I just put it on here to show you what it might look like. Strengthen your profile, and then it gives me an idea of something that I could do. You can overrule it. There are things that I am not including that it thinks would make my profile stronger, and that's fine. I can disagree. Another thing that I recommend, LinkedIn, at least as of the time that I'm recording this, does not make it possible for you to actually put bullets in, the little round dots in your profile, but that doesn't mean that you aren't able to add them. And so here are a couple of keyboard shortcuts that I use to help people do that. If you're using a Mac, just type Option 8, and wherever your cursor is, that will give you a bullet. Or if you're in Windows, hold down the Alt key while typing 0149, and you'll get a bullet right where your cursor is that way. So you can do it within your LinkedIn profile, like for experience and so on, and that will add a little bit of visual interest. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to walk you through a few particular person's. This is again a Hanover alum, and I wanted to walk you through her profile so you can see a lot of what I've just said in a single example. So in Trixia's case, she has a photograph that is a professional image that's somewhat casual. She's working in the software development field, and so looking like she's corporate America wouldn't make sense, but she looks like she's professional and she's taken effort with this image. Her headline is clear. You can understand quickly who she is and where she works. She used the default banner, but because she is interested in, or because she's working in software development in an interesting way, this looks like networking. The banner actually works for her as it is. So in her about section, it's keyword rich and relevant so that it seems like it's appropriate for the kind of audience that might be reading her profile. Let's say a potential customer client, for example, and she's uploaded her resume in this spot, which adds a little value there so they can learn a little bit more about her. Her experience is relevant, and so she's chosen things to feature that, again, help to make her case for software development. And she uses helpful explanations so that people can see what she's done in each of those settings. Her activities under education are interesting, and they're not all perfectly aligned with computer science. You get to see a different side of her. And that's an interesting strategy on her part, because it shows that she might be, she's got rugby on here, student senate rep, LOL. Those kinds of things help people to see that she is a well-rounded person who has been active on campus and might be a good conversationalist, for example, which goes to make a case toward the kind of colleague that she would be. So you don't have to be so narrowly focused that people don't get a little bit of a sense of the breadth of your background. She includes skills, and her skills are appropriate for the computer science field, so she's chosen them well. And she also has passed her LinkedIn assessment and included that as an additional credential that I think is a good use of this tool. And her accomplishments seem appropriate and show, again, the breadth of her interests. So nice job, Trixia. Does anybody have any questions before I move away from building a profile and start talking about some of the uses of LinkedIn? Feel free to unmute yourself, or Bree will monitor the chat for us. Okay, I can catch you later on if you'd like. Okay, so once you have built your LinkedIn profile, let's put it to work. There are several different things that you can do using LinkedIn that I'm going to be talking about in my presentation today. And I'm going to give some time to each one of these. So I'm not going to read that list. Instead, I'm going to dive right in. So one of the things that you need to do is to start expanding your network or building your network. And you can begin by reaching out to people who you already know personally and have connections with. I would recommend that all of you guys link with me. I use LinkedIn very specifically for my work at Hanover College. And so I connect with anybody who has a Hanover degree and additional people as well, but I'm way more selective about those additional people. I use LinkedIn as a way to give you guys access to Hanover alumni. So I have over 2,000 connections to serve as an open door for you to be able to access alumni. I'll explain a little bit more about what I just said in another slide, in the next slide. But in addition to reaching out to me and reaching out to your friends of your parents and your roommates' parents and, you know, your coaches and et cetera, LinkedIn itself will provide you with suggestions. These happen to be suggestions that popped up on my screen, and they're broken down by various different categories. People in the industry who I might want to follow, people who are in similar roles to mine that I might want to connect with, people who are in associations that I'm in. And it's always very helpful that it categorizes them by the way that I have a connection with them so that I can understand that and decide whether I want to connect with them. LinkedIn is frequently offering me that. I typically don't try to build my own network. Instead, people reach out to me. And when they do that, there's a default message that says, so-and-so wants to connect with you. But if you write a personalized message, that carries a lot of weight. It's more effective if you could say, I was hoping to connect with you on LinkedIn because I'm beginning my job search and I know that you're influential in your industry and I would love to have you as a connection. Something as simple as that is very effective to help people know that you're not just clicking on every button that you see. People put you will put your email address in your LinkedIn profile. I have my direct email address. And so I find that when I reach out to people through LinkedIn, it pops up on their office desk, not in their spam. And that means that they are likely to see your message quickly and respond to it much more quickly. And I have many, many stories about how that is true. So do think about the fact that you're going to be reaching out to people and you want to personalize your message. Okay, so this explains a little bit about how those connections work in LinkedIn. You are represented by the big dot here, and the people that you connect with are called your first degree connections. And you are also connected to all of the people they're connected to. Those are called second degree. And then the third degree, you can understand, that's as far as they trace it. And it will appear, your first, second, or third degree connections will appear on next to their photograph in their profiles or lists of them. So if you look at images in the future that I'm going to be putting up on this screen, you'll always see first, second, or third. That tells you how closely linked to them I am. And the rest of this slide tells you what privileges that provides you. You have complete connection or access to anybody who's a first degree connection, but the second degree can be very helpful. You can request an introduction and ask to connect with them, and that can be very helpful. And I have used it myself lots of times. I know that I mentioned Monarch Beverage a couple of minutes ago, and here's an example of how that's helped me. I had a student who wanted to work for Monarch Beverage, and I wanted to ask them to come to campus to recruit. So I it turns out my connection had left and I was looking for a new person to replace that connection. So what I did was to look on LinkedIn to see if I had any secondary degree connections. I did. So I reached out to that person and I said, hey, I see that you're connected to so-and-so at Monarch Beverage. Would you be willing to reach out to him and introduce me so that I can connect? She did. I wrote to him. He wrote back to me within a day, I think. And in a couple of days, I had him scheduled to come to campus. So that's the way that it works. It's a very strong way to reach people and have action done. And I have so many stories of connecting Hanover students to people who are, we had a student who wanted to work at Schneider Electric in Louisville. And she, I told her about an opening there. She did some looking on LinkedIn, saw that we had several alumni, asked me if I would introduce her to those alumni, which I did. She contacted them, asked them about questions about Schneider before she did her interview, and she ended up being hired by them because she had so much better chance to prepare well for her interview, having had all that inside information about what it's actually like to work there. So those are just a couple of examples. I've got plenty more. Okay, another thing that I really like to use LinkedIn for is researching organizations. If you're applying for a job and you want to do some background research to find out more about them, I think LinkedIn is a great way to do that. It has a whole array of different things that you can search for. You can find people who are working at an organization. You can find posts that the organization has had in your feed. You can find jobs that are available there. You can get company information that they have posted. And all of those are potentially good ways for you to find gain helpful knowledge before you actually interview or before you decide whether you want to even apply someplace. And people tend to keep their information current. So that means that you can mostly count on it to be up to date. The people who I'm hesitating about, brand new college students tend to be way more casual about keeping it current than people who are out there in the work world. On the right-hand side of this image, you can see some filters that are available, and there are filters available for all of these, for the job postings, for the people, so you can do sort of advanced searches to get entry-level jobs in the geographical location with the keywords that you're looking for. I also think LinkedIn is really helpful to research qualifications so that you can see what kinds of traits, work experience, skills, people who have been hired in roles that you're trying to get into have, so that you can make your background as ideal as possible. So as you are considering a position or interviewing for one, you can use LinkedIn to find similar positions and find out what kinds of tasks are people usually listing in their profile for that position, because those are the kinds of tasks that I'm likely to be asked to do, that I need to prove to somebody that I'm qualified to do. How much education is typical? Is this usually a master's level job? Do I need to go get an advanced degree before I go into it? Or is it a job that even requires a BA? That kind of information would be helpful as well. How much prior work experience does it require? Is this something that people jumped right into right after they graduated? Because you can find that out. You can see what year a person graduated from college, and then you can look at the time, how much time has elapsed between that and when they got this job you're interested in. And that tells you, wow, maybe I need a little bit more work experience before I'm able to be really competitive for this position. You can't decide that from a single entry because people are very anomalous, but together you can start to draw some conclusions. And then another thing that I find it helpful for is clarifying your goals. So you can, if you had some specific things that were true about you and you're not quite sure exactly what kind of position you're interested in, let's say that you were you're at Hanover College, you're a Phi Delta Theta, and you play baseball. Well, then what you can do is type those keywords into your search bar, and you can get names of people. That's what I have here on this slide. You can actually see what kinds of background or activities people are engaged in who have those things in their background. That is both something that may open up an option for you that you hadn't considered before. And it also gives you names of people who you might want to reach out to so that you can talk to them about what they're doing, how they feel like their career is progressing. And because you have those three things in common with them, those are a really great way to have good rapport with them right off the bat. So I think that it's sort of an inside out way to use LinkedIn, but it's one that I actually really like to do. And I alluded to this a little bit ago, but of course you can search for jobs here. There are a couple of different ways that works. One of them is if you do a good job of building your profile and building out your skills section, then LinkedIn will actually suggest jobs for you that it thinks might be a good fit. And it's supposed to be pretty robust in that way, but honestly, I'm not usually all that interested in the jobs it generates for me. So I'm not sure. You'll have to try it out and see what you think. Another choice is for you to actually set filters so that it can keep an eye out for positions that might be a good fit for you. So it does have a job search function. It's just not my favorite way to use LinkedIn. I think it's better to research possible places that you want to work, get all that inside information that was never available before LinkedIn, and then use it by searching and finding actual openings in other ways. Okay, so just a few helpful resources that I think I've referred to earlier that I wanted you to be aware of as you're building your LinkedIn profile. I mentioned ONET. I think this is a great way for you to start to figure out what is in your background that most qualifies you for the position that you're interested in. LinkedIn itself has more resources for college students. So university.linkedin.com/LinkedIn-for-students is a place where you can go to see resources that are geared toward undergraduates who are trying to build a good profile. If you go to the careercenter.hanover.edu students tab, under job services, we have some do's and don'ts for LinkedIn. And I think that you should also be aware that our career peer mentors are, as well as the staff in the Levitt Career Center, are qualified to help people with LinkedIn profiles. So we would be glad to help you with that. So does anybody have any questions for me?